I'm going to take one guess as to why you aren't creating art regularly. You have too much inspiration. Now, maybe this is like a generalization, and of course, there are a lot of reasons you may not be making art. And usually it's combining factors. But I know for myself, whenever I go through a period where I'm not making art, but still feeling creative and having ideas, it's usually at least partially due to one specific reason, and that's inspiration overload. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I mean by inspiration overload, because I think it comes in many forms. And I'm going to talk about the ways I've dealt with this problem. But I will say first, no matter how obvious some of the solutions are, implementing them is not always easy. And, I find sometimes it takes months to get out of creative ruts. So be patient with yourself and let's get into it. I'm going to roll some art footage in the background as I talk, and I think eventually I will get to what's going on in the background. Maybe I won't, but yeah. So let's get into the video. Part 1. The correlation between creation and consumption. I remember watching a video a long time ago. I don't remember who it was by, so I'm kind of paraphrasing here, where someone said they go through periods where all they do is create, and other periods where all they do is be inspired and take in other people's creations, and that those periods don't often, if ever, mix. Now, it may be a little bit extreme, because I know nowadays it's like hard to go a day, if not, like an hour, without taking in content. The world without the internet can provide enough ideas for overwhelming inspiration. But I think about that quote from that person I can't remember, from that video I can't remember, a lot. I find, for myself at least, in the periods of my life where I'm making art the most consistently, I'm usually consuming way less media. For example, I think most people would agree that while seeing our favorite artists' art on Instagram and YouTube can be inspiring, it doesn't usually make me more productive. And generally, that inspiration doesn't actually get me anywhere. In other words, endlessly scrolling on Instagram or watching endless chains of YouTube videos, even if I'm looking at art-related things, doesn't lead me to create more art. And that leads me to question, how are those two things connected? Creation and consumption. Now, it would be obvious enough to say, when I'm scrolling on Instagram or watching YouTube videos, I'm usually being lazy or procrastinating, but that doesn't mean I'm not inspired or thinking up loads of ideas I want to create or even itching to make something. So I don't think it's just general laziness. I really think if you just were to watch one video or look at a single piece of art or just look at one artist's profile online, it could do wonders for your productivity. It's that overconsumption, rabbit hole viewing that is the problem. Like, hear me out. When I'm traveling and seeing so many new sights in a day, I'm inspired to make art. And unlike when I'm inspired from being online, when I'm traveling, I actually stick to it, even though I'm seeing so much and so overly inspired. I think it's because real life moves a lot slower. Though you could have action-packed days, for the most part, even if you visit like 10 countries or 10 cities in 1 week, you're still gonna be having breaks where you're sitting on a bus or eating or taking in a view, where your brain just has time to focus on what's right in front of it. Figuring out what to create isn't hard when there's only one view in front of you and you've wanted to create all day and you're sitting somewhere for a little bit. Online life moves so much faster. In an hour, you can take in so much, debatably too much, which I think will just paralyze your brain. It makes it so much harder to take a break, it makes it so hard to sort through your thoughts, and it makes it hard to stop and want to connect to something like art making, which is such a slow process in comparison. Speaking of comparison, consuming media generally leads to comparison. Comparison between yourself and other people's art, or their apparent lifestyles, or whatever it may be. And while some comparison is good for you, bringing out competitiveness in you, like you'll be inspired to get things done because you see other people succeeding at what you want to do. But I do think in general, not that much good comes out of comparison. Perhaps if you were only comparing yourself to one person or simply discovering what you like about one person's art or something, that could work. But again, it's not just one person. In a few seconds, you can consume tens of people's online things. And life's already confusing enough, and knowing what you want to do or what you want to make is already a lot. But when you're trying to compare yourself and trying to live up to tens of people every second, that's just undoable, That's not sustainable for life, let alone productivity and happiness. A really good technique I hear people mention when they talk about finding a personal style is to look at what you like about your favorite artist's work. And while this has, worked to some degree, every person has so many different unique elements to their work, and there's so many different artists you're going to be inspired by that I find trying to find your style this way is just really overwhelming. I talked about this in so many videos, but whenever I create a piece with something specific in mind, I always have like 10 different color palettes I'd like to see in the piece, or 10 different styles I'd love to try painting in. Even if I know what I want the final piece to look like, I'm always conflicted. And you'll hear me talk about this like quite often, but when I have these conflicting ideas, usually the final piece turns out looking conflicted, and stiff, and not what I wanted, because what I wanted wasn't possible. And I think sometimes it's that overconsumption of inspiration that leads me to have too many things I want to fit into one piece, when if I just take my time and create a piece by piece, I can get everything out just slower than maybe scrolling through someone else's posts is. Now, all that being said, creation is likely not possible, or at least pretty unlikely, without some form of consumption. Like, what would you create if you were just in a room staring at the walls nonstop, never taking in new things, never being inspired by what's around you? Sure, you have enough in your head to create thousands of things, but how long would that productivity last if there isn't constant inspiration around you, or constant reminder from comparison that you need to keep creating? Some form of consumption, I think, is necessary for creation, but it needs to be limited. One small view, a single day, a single piece of art could inspire so much art making of your own. So I think it's about knowing your limits and limiting how much you take in, and pushing your brain to come up with new ideas with less. So that leads us into part 2, solutions to inspiration overload. Now, the most obvious solution, of course, is just to get off your device and take a small amount of time that you spend daily on whatever it is you do on your phone or computer in your sketchbook instead. Keep doing that until it takes up a larger slot in your life and becomes a routine. But if it were really that easy, we'd already be doing that. So here are some things that helped me start creating after being in a creative rut due to inspiration overload. Number 1, music only. You don't need to shut off your phone completely. You just need something less distracting. Sure, you can fade into music for hours and just get distracted and only listen to music, but honestly, there's something incredible about fading into creating art while listening to music. And since you'll be inspired through your ears, your eyes and your hands are free for something else. So I haven't done this in a while, but I used to have a routine where I'd sit down on my floor weekly and listen all the way through my Spotify recommended playlist and just draw while the music was playing. A pretty simple routine, but once I started, I found drawing for the full 2-hour playlist was easy. The issue is starting. So think of it this way. Don't force yourself to listen to a full playlist, or, convince yourself you need to draw for 2 hours every week. Just sit down and draw for a single song every day, or every week, or whatever it is you need. If you're enjoying yourself, you might keep drawing, and if you're not, that's okay. At least you drew for a few minutes that day. There's no need to force yourself to do something you're not enjoying, but just that little break in your day to draw will form a routine. So it's okay if you only drew for one song that day, or if you manage to get through a full playlist, there you go. That's great. Number 2, shut off your devices and leave the house. Sometimes I find it's not just my device that's distracting me and getting me into a creative rut, but my space. And nothing makes me feel like drawing more than being out and about. Treat yourself to go to a cafe and bring your sketchbook and some pencils. If you can't think of what to draw, there's, so much around. Or if you're trying to save money, go to the library, go for a walk, sit in a park, drive to the beach, wherever you know you'll be less distracted and more in the mood to create. Even if I have my phone or my computer with me, I usually find when I'm out, I'm less inclined to use them anyways. So take yourself on a date or go on a creative day with some friends and plan to create, or at least leave the house. Even if you don't make something, you'll feel more productive, and it's better than sitting around and consuming media, because it interrupts that cycle, which will probably eventually be good for your creative process. Plus, you might find inspiration while you're out, and less overwhelming inspiration that you could just remember that you want to draw when you get home. Number 3, create while consuming. Create a challenge for yourself. While you watch a movie, doodle characters' faces quickly. It's harder than you think since people are constantly moving in the background, but super good for your capturing skills. If you're watching nonstop YouTube, pause the video every 2 minutes and draw what's on screen. Maybe if you're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, quickly doodle something from every video or post you find interesting. It doesn't have to be a good piece. You could even just draw it with your eyes closed on a scrap piece of paper that you throw out right at the end. It doesn't matter. What the point is that you put pencil to paper. That's what's important. Whatever challenge you can think up that will make you create is a good challenge. You don't need to completely shut off your devices or stop enjoying your favorite media to be creative. You just need to learn how to procrastinate productively sometimes. Speaking of this point, I'm actually starting a little bit of a challenge like this on my channel, so that'll be introduced in my next live stream, which right now I think is planned for Friday. So stay tuned if you need a way to casually get back into creating. Number 4, keep notes of your ideas and what inspires you. If you're watching a video or looking at a post on Instagram or TikTok that inspires you, don't save it to your watch later or a saved posts list and trust yourself to go back to it. You don't have to draw to get back into drawing. So when you're scrolling, just keep like a little piece of paper or pencil with you and keep some notes. You know, you see someone doing something you like and you'd like to try, write it down. You're watching a video and you have an idea for a drawing, draw a little thumbnail or a doodle. Like just, again, you're just trying to get yourself to put pencil down on paper, not make a work of art. More often than not, you may find yourself doodling if you have that paper and pencil next to you, so just keep something around. It doesn't have to be like you're forcing yourself to create. Just make it casual, and when you have something you want to write it down, because that process of connecting to paper will probably get the ball rolling for you to start making something. Now, there's lots of more ways you could go about getting back into creating after facing inspiration overload. But to be honest with you, the idea is pretty much similar no matter what you do. Just figure out what will get you starting, convince yourself to do it for even just a minute, and you'll probably do it for longer. Whether it be listening to music, challenging yourself, leaving the house, treating yourself with some positive reinforcement, be around people that make you want to create, or keeping track of ideas you'll be excited to create later, whatever it may be. Figure out what will actually get you to follow through and start doing that. I realized I never talked about the piece in the background, but basically I started this piece over a month ago. I did like my face in a dip pen and this little watercolor thing next to it, and while I liked the page, it felt super unfinished, so I felt like drawing a few days ago, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I flipped to this unfinished page and I just drew from a photo reference I took when I was driving through Saskatchewan. And I have some flowers that I painted in the garden right around me just as reference. I didn't want to put any pressure. I was just super casual, sketching on top of what I'd already done. Not trying to perfect anything, just enjoying the process. And, you know, that's what it's all about, right? Like, open up your sketchbook, get rid of pressure, start creating, and enjoy the process. Because you're going to make so much more work you like by creating casually than you will if you put tons of pressure to create the perfect piece. I think that's about all I have today. I could talk about this topic for hours, but I'm going to cut it short here and maybe make some more videos about inspiration overload or ways to get back into creating. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to be doing a live stream, I think on Friday around 5 p.m. Pacific time or 8 p.m. Eastern time, where we actually do a challenge to get creating. So if you need a push, feel free to join. And if you aren't subscribed, do so, because then you'll see when the live stream starts, or you can watch it after if you can't join. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.